My name is Jane Donato Dempsey. Donato is my maiden name, and I'm really proud that I've put it as my middle name. I am the founder and the CEO of my new company called Butterfly Pathways at Soaring Success. I want to tell you a little bit about why I started this company and also some hints about how I look at life. A large part of my company is in coaching, caregiver coaching, relationship coaching, and spiritual coaching. They're all a part of my life path. So I think that sometimes we get stuck because life gives us surprises, and I usually like diamonds or presents or flowers as surprises. But sometimes we get surprises that we don't like illness or financial problems. And I don't know about you, but when I get stuck, I go right into my cocoon. So let me tell you about my cocoons. And then there's a choice. It's a choice that we have to make every single time. Do we want to stay in the cocoon, or do we want to get out of it? And if we do, we get out of it, and if we want to make a better situation, then we have to say, how am I going to do it? And the way we do it are pathways, because we want to get to that success place. And many of the times, the success is in the trying. So, I was raised a little princess. My parents, Agnes and John Donato, had two daughters. Carol and I were 5.5 years old apart, and we were like two only children because we were both little princesses. So to give you an idea, when I was raised Roman Catholic, which I later changed, but that was my background at the time. And Daddy, who was a policeman and a prize fighter, brought me to the church for my first communion. But the problem was I had brand new shoes, and I didn't want the bottoms of my shoes dirty. So I looked at Daddy and I said, I don't want the bottoms of my shoes dirty. And he said, okay, Daddy girl. And Daddy picked me up. And if anybody knows of St. Timothy's Church in Levick Street in Philadelphia, there's about 100 steps. And Daddy just carried me up the 100 steps and into the church when I had nice, clean tops and bottoms of my shoes. All my life, as a little girl, I never had a job. I never had a chore. My only job was to go to school and get good grades. And I was a goody-goody two-shoes, really pretty repulsive. Like, instead of going to a party, Saturday night, I would study, there's negatives to being that. But anyway, it was great, except that it didn't prepare me at all for the world. So at 20, I got married, and in that marriage, I had two beautiful children, Louis and Veronica, but I wasn't happy, and I didn't want to stay unhappy. As wonderful as my parents were, they weren't the best of compatibility. So I'm Italian American, and if anybody knows about the Italian family, the idea of it's none of your business has no translations at all. So the antenna went out. She's going to get a divorce. She's going to get a divorce. What do we do? How do we control her? So all of my aunts lovingly called on their own and said, what's wrong? I said, well, I'm not happy. And each one of them said, what's happy got to do with it? You have a nice house, you have kids. What's happy got to do with it? Listen, I hate your uncle, but I'm still married. So at the end of the week, they really helped me a lot because I said, you're all crazy. And then I got a divorce. And at that point, I was 24. 2 years later, I met Stephen. He was absolutely my soulmate. And we took 4 years to make sure the second time was right. He was previously married also, and he had 2 beautiful children, Stephen and Emily. So we got married. It was a beautiful wedding. We moved into a new house, and we wanted to have another child. So we had some problems. We went to a fertility specialist, and we got pregnant. And that Christmas was unbelievably happy. Around January, Stephen had a routine blood check that was disturbing. The white count was extremely high, and we went to a hematologist who told us that he had no symptoms, but he had chronic myelogenous leukemia, a very rare form of leukemia that's only 1,000 people in the United States a year. And the hematologist was very cold, didn't even say hi, said, you know, you'll be fine in the chronic stage, but as soon as you go to the acute stage, you'll be dead in 6 weeks. Nicholas was born in March. By August, very shortly, Stephen went acute. And the prognosis was 6 weeks. And with those times, with the divorce, even though it was my choice, with this horrible news that here I am with this new life and new excitement, and now my husband has leukemia and he went acute, my first response is to go into the cocoon stage. I was frozen. But then I had to decide, well, what do you want to do? Want to stay frozen? Or do you want to go ahead and look for the opportunities to make this the best situation it can? So I chose to go forward and to create pathways. And the going forward was to look at alternative therapies, because in the allopathic way, there wasn't any. So we did. And Stephen lived another year. And financially, it was very hard because none of the alternative therapies were covered and we needed care at home. But I said, what do I do? Back in the cocoon. And then I thought, well, here's what I have. I have my children's college fund. What do I want to do? It's a choice. And I chose to take that pathway, to know that I would have done everything that I could. And we used that money, and it lasted to the very month before he died. But I knew that I did the best of everything, and that was so important to me. But the biggest success at that time was before Stephen died, we had this beautiful time together. And he said, I'm ready to die because of the love that you provided for me and the love of the children. I experienced more joy than I could ever imagine. Now, I was so gung-ho on saving his life that I never even prepared for the possibility of his death. 3 days before we had that conversation, that's all I had. 3 days to think he might die. But at the hospital, when he died, I remember being in the corridor, feeling like I was dropped out of an airplane without a parachute. And then I went home to my children, and I tried to start walking again, but I was stuck at that cocoon. And a few weeks into this, I just wanted a hug. I really didn't go to cemeteries before, but I went to the cemetery. I'm looking for something, and I fell asleep on Stephen's grave. This poor guy woke me up and he said, "Lady, are you all right?" And I said, "Of course I'm all right. I'm having the best sleep I've had ever." He said, "Well, you're sleeping on top of a grave." And I thought, okay, he's not going to come here. I'm going to die too. And I think you can will yourself to die. And that's probably the biggest cocoon of all the cocoons. But then I thought that it was really a lousy trick for my children. So walking to the car, I decided, again, a pathway to go home and take off my wedding bands and to go forward, because death is death and you can't be half alive. So I went forward and did the best I could to raise now 3 beautiful children. It was Louis, Veronica, and now Nicholas. And I always am so grateful, because if we knew that Stephen had leukemia, we probably wouldn't have gone to the fertility specialist, and I'm very thankful we did. So now I'm in life, I'm starting again, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until 15 years later that I met my current husband, Michael. Now, in those 15 years, I had met a lot of, not bad people, but I want to say the word schmucks, but I'm not sure it's the right word, because they weren't bad, they just weren't compatible. Like the guy who said to me, "I really want to get serious with you, but I'm so afraid of the responsibility of you and the kids that I want to go home to mommy and daddy." And I said, "Let me drive you to mommy and daddy, and then we're done with this thing." So anyway, one day, I was dropping Nicholas off as a retreat weekend, and this poor guy, who later turned out to be Michael, turned down the window and said, "Do you know where the singles meeting is?" And I thought, oh dear God, I had gone to one singles meeting. They were so repulsive. So I said, "Let me park the car and I'll walk you to it." And as we walked, I thought he was pretty cute. And we exchanged stats, and he was divorced and I was widowed. So he said, "Why don't you come back to the singles meeting?" So I did go back, and to make a long story short, because it is a long story, maybe in the next time, Michael and I not only started dating, but again, this 4 years thing, we decided to get married. And maybe this wasn't nice, but before we got married, I asked him to get, a whole workup, because I really wanted him to be healthy of all things, because I didn't want to repeat this all over again. Well, we think we don't get. So we were married in 2000, year 2000. 2005, Michael had his first heart attack, and it was a severe one. He recovered from that, and he had worked for Cigna as an AVP for finance, and now he was at the point that he had been trying to get a job and had 4 all-day interviews, so it looked pretty good, as a CFO for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And of course, he was very excited. But the doctor said to him, "You know what, you have a little carotid artery problem here. Why don't we take that blockage out and see what it is and whatever, and then do it before you start work. You'll be out of the hospital in 2 days." Well, unfortunately, on the recovery table, Michael had 2 strokes. Ischemic, where the brain swells, and hematologic, where the brain bleeds. And Michael went from being, totally vibrant to what's called a 3-person transfer. He needed 3 people to transfer him, the bed to the chair, maybe, 6 inches away. And I smiled, but looking at him saying, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? Again, I wanted to jump back into that cocoon. Well, actually, it wasn't even a choice. I went back. I had no idea what to do. But then I chose again to go forward and to research and start whatever I had to do to make life wonderful. And it's that choice that's so important. So Michael went in inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, and he even passed the driving test. There's a driving test especially for stroke victims. And he said, you know what? I don't like financing. I want to be a life coach. So he took the course for IPEC to become a life coach. And he and I started a business of 2x2 coaching. And we were really good at it. And then in August of 2013, routine blood check, I got a call from the doctor, and he said, this is crazy, but you have to get to the hospital immediately. But I knew exactly what it was. And I was in a store when I got that phone call. I went out and I called my son Nicholas, and I started crying and screaming. I can't do it again. I just can't. Michael went in the hospital, and it was confirmed that he had the same rare form of leukemia that Stephen had. Yep, that cocoon looked really good. But nope, that wasn't going to save his life. And it wasn't. I was there to love him. God gave me him to love. So I started the pathways. And it's a very long story of chemo and integrative medicine, and how his lungs were compromised and his kidneys were compromised, and eventually he had 2 more strokes and another heart attack. And these strokes were all also cognitive and affected his peripheral vision. So he had what's called cortical blindness, and still does. Now, during that time with Stephen and Michael, and in between, I took care of my mother, which I'm so grateful for doing to the rest of her life. After my father died, I learned so much as a caregiver, because I had to drive. I wasn't going to do it halfway. Sometimes I wish I could do mediocrity, but I'm a Capricorn, and Capricorns can't do mediocrity. Maybe that's part of who I am and why I am who I am. So anyway, I've learned so much over the course of how to be a caregiver, how to create charts, how to communicate to doctors with digital notes that I take daily and weekly, how to advocate for him. And basically, I call it running the hospital when he's in there. Michael nicknamed me Little General. But I've learned so much that I want to give it to you. So this is why I'm starting my company. Butterfly Pathways to Soaring Success is mainly a life coaching, and it would be my pleasure to give you everything I know as a life coach. So contact me if you're interested, and we can talk about you and what your choices are. First choice has to be, do I want to go forward or do I want to go backwards? If you want to go backwards and not grow, life coaching is not for you. But if you want to grow and take control of your life and create those pathways to really soar and to be a success, I'm here to help you. So my email is janedempsey@butterflypathways.com. My phone number is 856-299-0888, and I am here to help you. So bye for now, and I hope to hear from you soon. Take care, and I hope I did this right, because techie is not, my biggest long suit, but I hope that it came out okay. Take care. Bye-bye.